Well, as Justice Enin Yeboah, we've known him fondly in some circles, gets ready to step aside. We have, of course, another person standing in the wings. There always must be a continuation of the process. And as far as the bench is concerned, whose name has been penciled? Well, at a point, we saw a certain Yoni Kulendi's name. He, of course, having worked extensively at the bar, and he was nominated. He sailed through the parliamentary process, becoming a member of the bench at the apex court, the Supreme Court. But what we're hearing now is that in that supposed tango between nominating Yoni Kulendi or Justice Gertrude Torkornoo, the president has nominated Justice Mrs. Torkornoo to take over. And of course, we've had Georgina Theodora Wood, we've had Sophia Akufo. She will be the third, if she passes the test, to become Chief Justice of the Republic, third woman to be the Chief Justice. Well, joining me in the studio, I have my colleague Joseph Akable, our court correspondent as well, joining me here for a conversation.
Hello, Ben.
Good to have you.
Always good to
There's
be
something
here.
I wanted to say. It's mischievous. I will not say it. I'll save it for after this conversation. You know, on a more serious note, we are very serious with our work, but sometimes, apart from the work, we are not so serious. Joseph Akable, so walk us through what has been happening. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the banter on social media and a lot of talk. Is it going to be Yoni Kulendi? Is it going to be Justice Torkornoo? Now we can positively say, right? Give us that release from Mr. President.
So it's actually a letter that was written by the president to the chairperson of the Council of State.
Right.
And it's titled Appointment of New Chief Justice of the Republic. And it says, I hope this finds you in good health and spirits. Chief Justice Kwesi Enin Yeboah is due to retire from the bench on 24th May 2023. That is his 70th birthday. In order to avoid a vacuum and ensure that a new Chief Justice is immediately in office after his retirement, I have decided to begin the process of appointment now. Article 1441 of the Constitution, which governs the appointment of a Chief Justice, requires that I first consult with the Council of State before seeking approval of Parliament. Consequently, I am nominating Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Torkornoo, a member of the Supreme Court, as the new Chief Justice. I hereby enclose a copy of a curriculum vitae for your attention. I am fully satisfied that Justice Torkornoo, who has been on the Supreme Court for the last 4 years and has been a member of the judiciary for the last 19 years, is duly qualified and eminently fit to discharge the functions of Chief Justice. I will be grateful for the Council's expeditious action on Justice Gertrude Torkornoo's nomination so that Parliament may be at liberty to consider it as early as possible during its current session, such that a new Chief Justice will be ready to be sworn into office upon the retirement of Chief Justice Kwesi Enin Yeboah, and is signed by Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic.
Of course, it is on the back of the fact that he doesn't want a vacuum to be created, because within a month, Justice Enin Yeboah will exit per the law.
Yes.
And someone must take over, so there is no break in, the leadership. But what do we know about Gertrude Torkornoo? As students of the law, these are names you hear all the time. What do we know about her in terms of her career progression? What has she been doing all this while?
So basically a lawyer her entire life, called to the bar in 1986. She was born on September 11, 1962. So later
Did you say 1986?
Yes, she has been a lawyer since 1986.
That's close to when I was born. So it tells you how long
she has been. And she joined the High Court as a judge in 2004. Then in 2012, she was appointed to the Court of Appeal. Then in 2019, she joined the Supreme Court. She's from Winneba. In 2011, she graduated from the Golden State University, USA, with an LLM in intellectual property law. And so far, she has participated in a number of cases that we'll be discussing shortly. Okay,
so her legal reasoning, because each of these judges, they have a sort of paper trail. You would usually tell on issues like this is where they lean. This is how they deliver decisions on them. What has hers been like, Justice Torkornoo? And maybe tell us about some notable cases she has superintended over.
So the cases, like you rightly indicated, give us a sense of how she reasons generally on some of the key issues that have come up. And I'll touch on a number of the cases. One is Michael Ankoma Nimfa versus James Gyakye and the Attorney General. It's the case in which the Supreme Court, by a majority 5-2 decision, restrained a member of parliament from holding himself as such. She was part of this particular panel, and she was joined by her colleagues, Justice Yoni Kulendi, who actually authored the lead opinion, and Justice Dotie Mariam Owusu and Justice Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, to come to the conclusion that Gyakye should be restrained. We remember that the other two dissenting was Justice Doji and Nena Megacha. The principle the court effectively upheld in that case was the issue of constitutional supremacy, that the constitution is the supreme law of the land and that rule of law is important to be upheld and non-negotiable. And where such serious allegations have been leveled about the possibility that there has been a breach of the constitution, the court took the view that the Supreme Court, as the highest court of the land, would have to step in and halt that breach from even recurring for a second, just because the constitution is very important and it must be preserved at all times. Another notable case that she was part of the panel is the case of Association of Finance Houses versus the Bank of Ghana. This case had to do with some directives that had been issued by the Bank of Ghana to the finance houses. Now, the finance houses took the view that this was a matter that, in terms of the Article 11 procedure, should have gone to Parliament, and that it's not the case that the BOG can just sit at its head office and issue such directives and expect that it will have the force of law against the finance houses. The Supreme Court disagreed with that argument and took the view that in terms of that particular regulations that were issued, because they were in the nature of administrative nature and not legislative, it meant that it did not have to go to Parliament. And so in that particular instance, again, we saw the court look at the issue of separation of powers, the issue about the importance of delegated powers and how such delegated powers are extended and to which extent limits should be placed on it. Interestingly, that particular decision was also authored by Justice Yoni Kulendi, but Justice Gertrude Torkornoo was part of the 7 that unanimously ruled that this should be the position of the law. The final one I'll touch on has to do with the election petition, the 2021. She was part of the 7-member panel that heard the petition and unanimously dismissed the case of John Dramani Mahama. You recall, in terms of those who, because a lot of you don't tend to see the judges up front, she's the judge who had a banter with Chachu Chikata and said that I used to eat kenke in your house as well. And so does that raise any issue about us?
Yeah. The last time I saw her was at an event I was moderating at the Accra International Conference Center, and it was interesting. This was sometime last year. It was a very interesting bit there. But anyway, let's.
Yeah. So I mean that's it by way of the cases. I mean, when she was vetted as a Supreme Court nominee and she appeared before Parliament's Appointments Committee. Just a quick point on the cases though. When she was at the Court of Appeal, she handled a good number of the ANAS cases. You remember the cases that the judges who were caught up in the judicial corruption scandal, they filed a series of cases against the Judicial Committee. She was the special judge who was tasked to sit as an additional High Court judge to deal with those matters. And even at a point, Justice Paul Wutaderi's legal team had wanted her removed because they raised issues of bias, among others.
I remember that.
But she dealt with a number of those cases. And so when she appeared before the vetting panel, the Appointments Committee, the issue of dressing and how lawyers and judges dress came up during the vetting. And she had reason to make the point. I left her alone. She doesn't even mind if they have to wear African prints.
and I found that really interesting because, sometime, was it late last year or early this year, we had Sufai Akufo wade into that. You remember, the Chief Justice, there was this event, the Chief Justice was there, and Sufai Akufo, and they both seemed to reason along certain lines when it comes to that. I think I would lean towards what Justice Torkornoo. And now that she's going to become Chief Justice, these are exciting times. They could mark a real paradigm shift in terms of some of these little bits, maybe not so little when it comes to our justicial system and even how we dress. In Kenya, I remember there was this person, I think it was a judge issue, and he had locks.
Yes, I remember.
He had locks. I've forgotten the full details of that story. But I found that really interesting. I don't see that happening now, the way things are.
I think generally the profession, like it's said over and over again, very conservative. But as to what type of task she has ahead and what type of CJ she's supposed to be. We know that she's going to come into office once everything goes through at a time where the judiciary has in recent times come under very serious attack, particularly from the opposition NDC. I mean, we heard NDC presidential candidate 2020, John Mahama, say that the next Chief Justice must restore the battered image of the judiciary. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a section of Ghanaians who generally feel that the courts have not been fair to their cause for a while now. As to whether that is a legitimate concern or not, it's nonetheless a reality that people that have that perception. And so that is one area that you have to, beyond modernizing and making the judicial system a bit more liberal than it should be, she would have to again address the issue of perception as well. And I mean, the makeup of the court currently will also be quite, interesting because, we know that you don't have to be the senior most to be appointed the Chief Justice. And obviously, she's not the senior most. There are others who are senior to her, like Justice Jones Doche, even though he will be exiting just in June. There is also Paul Bafo-Boni, who has also been at the Supreme Court since 2015. There's Gabriel Palmine as well. Justice Bafo-Boni was appointed the Akufo era. Then you have Gabriel Palmine, who was appointed in 2015 as well. And so, she would have to, just like Georgina would, be CJ over individuals who some are her seniors on the bench.
Right, and that's the interesting bit about the bench, especially at the apex court. But we'll see how that plays out. Very different system we operate compared to what the United States, for example, operates, where sometimes it even comes down to a vote on some of these offices. But just to end on an interesting note, we had never had a female Chief Justice. And then in 2007, we got that with Georgina Theodora Wood. And now we have 3. So within a spate of 16 years, we're having our 3rd one.
What took us almost 60 years plus, we've just gone, that quickly around it, yeah? That's good news.
Good news, most definitely. And of course, we cannot take away, what's her name? I forgot. In Parliament, the first female...
Justice Akufo-Addo.
Yes. Yes.
Former Supreme Court.
That was also a good one.
Also a big one, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So, but I think we've not gone that back there again.
No, we've not. We've done something different by having someone from the opposition become
that's a fair point. So that's the difference.
That's the difference in this. Joseph Akable.
Just a quick one on the age. The age is very interesting because you remember when Justice Georgina Wood took over, she lasted Mills. To Akufo-Addo when he's replaced. We seem to be heading towards that direction now because she's just 61 and she would have to retire at 70. All other things being equal.
She has a long time
of moving in between administrations like we saw under Georgina.
Yeah. And I feel that longevity usually works. That's my take
the opposition party.
The longevity usually works.
The opposition party will not necessarily be happy. And a colleague was drawing my attention that since the last time the NDC appointed a Chief Justice was under Rawlings. Yeah. Right.
It's been, because the age dynamics, like you rightly mentioned, Theodora Wood, and it extended over that period. So this is another one that will extend likely over 2 terms.
And even with the...
2 terms.
Yes.
Because if you look at it now, 9 years left on her leadership clock. And we're in 2023. That takes us all the way to 2032.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
By which time we would have had the 2024 election, yes, 2028 election, 2032 election. So it will actually end in another electoral cycle.
Yes, and even in terms of how the Supreme Court itself will look. Once the Chief Justice exits in May, Justice Doche exits in June, it will mean that with the exception of Paul Bafo-Boni was appointed by John Ajikun Kufuor, and Gabriel Palmine was appointed by John Mahama. All other judges at the Supreme Court, 14 of them, all appointed by President Akufo-Addo.
Actually, that's an important point you make.
Yep.
I think Yoni was the latest one from
that, even
that batch.
Apart from the Yoni batch.
No, the new, there are the new ones, just a few.
Just a few. They all form part of this 14. So it is, the court is looking very different and very young, if I can put it that way, as well.
The president has he's left his mark on the court, hasn't he?
Definitely.
Joseph Akable, our court correspondent, joining me in the studio as we contemplate these matters. Well,